Okay, sleep training, nap edition. So far, we're not doing great. The night training is going rather well. I'm doing some separate videos on our sleep training and how our nights are going because, you know, it's a package deal. You have to do both. Daytime's where we struggled the most before we started any program, and it's still where we are struggling the most. Now, if you do any kind of research on sleep training, you'll know that naps tend to be more of a struggle, so I was expecting this. It's hard. It's really, really hard, but we'll get into this. So day 3 and 4. So day 3, we woke up at 7:01 and nursed. At 8:45, we laid him down, and he was crying. At 8:53, he was calming down and then asleep. It was great. It seemed like, you know, poof, 8 minutes, he was asleep. 3 minutes later, he was awake. So we let him cry for a few minutes to see if he was going to go back to sleep. And at first it seemed like he was going to go back to sleep. And then it just seemed like it wasn't happening. So my husband went in to comfort him. And that didn't seem to work. So at 9:15, we got him out of bed. A few minutes later, he had a big burp. So I don't know if that's what was keeping him awake. Regardless, he was awake for an hour and 45 minutes when I laid him down, and he had after 8 minutes he went to sleep. He had a few moments of sleep and then woke up again. So from start to end, it was a half an hour that we let him lay there. He didn't really get much of a sleep there. Nap number 2 was at 10:26, or an hour and 10 minutes later. 10:35, he was sleeping, and at 10:46, he was awake. So, you know, it took him 10 minutes to get to sleep, and he had 10 minutes of sleep. So now it is 10:45, and this boy has had maybe 12 minutes of sleep. So I put him in the car seat and I took him for a drive. In the Sleep Sense program, some videos you get access to with just purchasing their basic plan, which is the book and some of these videos for $20, 20 American dollars. And she says that if you miss 2 naps, then you need to resort to one of your bad habits, basically, that you know will put them to sleep, and hopefully that's not nursing. So typically it's the car, it's a walk, or nursing as like your last resort. So it was raining here, so I threw him in the car, and I thought if he doesn't fall asleep in like 10 minutes, then I'm gonna go back home. We're just gonna continue on and pretend like the nap happened, or like the nap was substantial, and continue on with our day. So he fell asleep within 10 minutes. So he drove him around for a bit, and he ended up sleeping for 35 minutes in the car. So I was really torn at this moment. I mean, I was hoping to not have to resort to these things, but I don't want him to get so overtired that he's not sleeping. And this is a very stressful process for him, absolutely. So I don't want to get him too stressed out over this. I mean, it's tough enough for both of us. So I felt that was the right thing to do at the time, so that's what I did. Nap number 3 came at 1:29. I laid him down. 10 minutes in, he showed signs that he was going to sleep. So he's, crying a little bit and stopping and turning his head to the side, and then he cries a little bit and stops and turns his head to the side. And then a few minutes later, he was just going strong again with crying. 45 minutes later, this time I let him go for the full hour, because it says, you're supposed to let them try to get themselves to sleep for an hour and 10 minutes actually. And if they don't, then you go in and you get the baby and you open the curtains and you turn on the light like the nap is over. You take a little break for both of you, because it's a very hard thing to do on you too. And then you can try again at least 20 to 30 minutes later. And from there, you just have to kind of judge your baby and watch for cues. Your baby's gonna be tired at that point. Yeah, 129. I didn't wait the hour and 10 minutes. I waited an hour. I couldn't listen to this boy cry anymore. And I knew he wasn't getting to sleep. I mean, he wasn't showing any signs that he was trying to get himself to sleep. He was just too worked up at this point. So we went and got him, and it took a little bit to calm him down. I nursed him a little bit to help calm him, which of course he started getting drowsy, but he didn't fall asleep on the boob. He just, I let him calm down a little bit. So then nap number 4 came at 4:03, so this is about an hour and a half later. And it took him 12 minutes to get to sleep, and he had 15 minutes of sleep. So that was an absolutely horrible, horrible day for naps. I felt horrible by the end of the day. His bedtime was a little bit earlier that evening. It was about 10 or 15 minutes earlier, and when I put him to bed, he just passed out cold. So this is even a little more confusing, because anything I've read about sleep training says, you can't rob Peter to pay Paul. So by them not getting a lot of sleep during the day, they're going to get even less sleep at night, is generally the rule of thumb. Well, this kid passed out cold. Before I even made it downstairs and turned the monitor on, he was asleep. And he stayed asleep for almost the whole night. He stirred once for about 5 minutes and got himself back to sleep. If you want to hear more about that, I will link our nighttime training videos. But yeah, so that was confused me even more, because I was expecting him to have a horrible night because he had had such a horrible day, but he actually had a great night. So then getting into day 4, which was today, this was another absolutely horrible, horrible day. When he woke up this morning, his throat and voice were very raspy. He had a little bit of his morning babble, but not much. And I'm telling you, this kid did not talk at all today. He didn't babble. He didn't really say anything. And just his voice, it sounded like he went to a concert last night and just had a great time and was hooting and hollering and yelling all night long. And it's from how much crying he did yesterday, and it is absolutely heartbreaking to hear. So he was up at 6 o'clock this morning, which is earlier than he has typically gotten up, but he had pretty much a full night's sleep. And it didn't really seem like he was going back to sleep when he woke up at 6. So my husband and I made the decision that that was just going to be his wake up time. And we're glad that we did, because he was awake and alert. He calmed down rather quickly, and he nursed really, really well. And he was awake. So at 7:48 was the first time that I laid him down. He didn't cry for a couple of minutes. And then at 7:57, he was doing a sleep cry. And then at 8:01 he was asleep, and at 8:03 he was awake crying. So he was up for an hour and 45 minutes, 13 minutes to get to sleep, 2 minutes of sleep. It's really hard because now he's crying, and even his cry is different. I mean, you can hear the rasp in his voice. And you can tell that his throat is sore, and I'm supposed to let him cry. I'm supposed to let him cry for an hour. Didn't happen today. My husband went in at 8:07 to offer him some comfort, and it didn't comfort him, and it did not look like he was trying to put himself back to sleep. So at 8:13, I had gotten him up, because this had been about a half an hour now since I first laid him down. And I nursed him a little bit to help calm him and to help soothe his throat. Breast milk is supposed to be like the miracle juice, right? The miracle milk. It's going to adapt to what your baby needs. And I know that this boy's throat was sore, so I nursed him a little bit there, even though that was out of the timing of the schedule that we're trying to keep. So nap number 2 came at 9:18, and I laid him down. He was crying. At 9:21 he was asleep. And at 9:22, he was crying. 9:25, he did a sleep cry, sleep cry. 9:27, he was asleep. And then at 9:50, he was awake. So, you know, he was up for an hour and 5 minutes. It took him 9 minutes to get to sleep, and he got 23 minutes of sleep, which isn't bad, but still pretty crappy, considering that his first nap was almost non-existent. That was a really crappy second nap. So his third nap, it was at 11:20, and at 11:22 he was doing a sleep cry, sleep cry. 11:27 he was asleep, and 11:30 he was awake. He had 3 minutes. He got 3 minutes of sleep. So again, that like doesn't even really count. And he's crying, and he is not showing any signs of trying to put himself back to sleep. So I'm feeling really, really defeated at this point. He's, you know, not sleeping. He's missing a lot of sleep. So I got him up, and again, I had to nurse him to calm him down a little bit because he was rather worked up. And, you know, like I said, it's heartbreaking to listen to him with that throat. So nap number 4, it's 12:15, and we're on nap number 4 of the day. So I laid him down at 12:14, and at 12:18 he was doing a sleep cry, sleep cry. At 12:23 he was asleep, and at 12:29 he was awake. So this time he got 6 minutes. So, you know, he was up for 45 minutes from his last nap. It took him 9 minutes to get to sleep, and he got 6 minutes of sleep. So at this point, I'm, you know, thinking I have a disaster on my hands. I have a nap disaster that's gonna just snowball the rest of the day, is how it's trending right now. So I put him in his car seat and in his stroller and took him for a walk. And as I'm walking, I'm crying because I don't know what to do at this point. I feel so lost. The day before, when I had him in the car, I said to myself, you know what? The next time this happens, we're gonna ride it out. We're gonna ride it out and see what happens. So today, when this happened, you know, I felt like even more of a failure. We're on day 4, and 3 of 4 days I have had to put him in his car seat at some point so that he could get some sleep. I walked him for about a half an hour, and trying to decide, you know, he needed a break. I needed a break. I needed a break to kind of clear my head and figure out how we were going to keep proceeding. I mean, I don't want to keep resorting back to these bad habits, but, you know, I don't want to let my little baby go all day with getting 3 minutes of sleep. He had 23 minutes of sleep, 3 minutes of sleep, 6 minutes of sleep. Like he's had a half an hour of sleep, and it's noon. He's been up for 6 hours. That's awful. It's absolutely awful. So, you know, that's what my instinct told me to do. So that's what I did. And I still don't know if it was the right thing to do or not. He ended up sleeping for 2 hours. Even after I got home, he was in his car seat for another hour and a half, and he slept. So, you know, he obviously needed some sleep. I don't know if, you know, we would have just tried again in another half an hour, 45 minutes. At that point, it gets so confusing because he always looks tired. But I wasn't sure when to lay him down. And like I said, with his voice, he sounds awful. So we both needed a break. Judge me if you will. I put him in his car seat and I took him for a walk. So then he ended up sleeping. It was about 3 o'clock when he woke up. So now that puts me in another position because, you know, I don't think he's going to make it all the way till bedtime. We usually start our evening routine around 6 o'clock. He goes to a bath, and we're finished that. I'm usually laying him down around 6:40. And at 5 o'clock, he's showing me signs that he's tired. So again, I had to make a call. Do I, try to let him nap? That could end up being he's waking up from a nap at 6 o'clock. He could have cried for another half an hour and had 3 more minutes of sleep. Who knows what would have happened? So I started everything an hour early, and he ended up laying down at 6 o'clock instead of 6:30 to 6:40. And he went to bed in a couple of minutes. Again, he's exhausted after a day like today. Even getting that big 2-hour nap in the afternoon, it's still a very exhausting process for him. So that's how day 4 went. Typically, from what I've read, night training starts to come around after about a week, and the daytime training takes about 2 weeks. So far, it's been absolutely horrible. It's doesn't seem to be getting any better. So hopefully in the next few days to come, when we're rounding out our first week, we start to see some progress during the day, because we're seeing great progress at night. So I'm just kind of hoping that once he gets a little bit better at putting himself to sleep through the night, that will help him put himself to sleep and stay asleep during the day. So we'll see what happens. Here's to hoping that days 5 and 6 start to get a little bit better. If you liked this video or found it a little bit helpful, or want to continue with us and see how our sleep training journey ends, then consider giving a thumbs up and maybe even subscribing. Thanks.